Let's talk about this capital program. When we say capital, we're not talking about money. We're talking about the housing stock. And that number is so big, $13 billion shortfall over the next few years?
Correct. So the $13 billion reflects the needs of investing in all of public housing across New York City. As you know, Errol, we have 180,000 units. So the number seems large, and it is large, but it's in the context of the total infrastructure. Currently, to put it in perspective, today, we have about $7 billion of unmet needs, and between now and the end of 2015, that number will grow to roughly $13 billion. It's reflective of the fact that the housing stock is aging, right? Over 75% of our buildings are over 40 years old. Unfortunately, there wasn't a plan to have an ongoing state of good repair from the money that we received from the federal government. And here in New York and across the country, public housing is underinvested in, and that's the result of many, many years of underfunding.
Yeah, when I talk to you about it, because we've had this conversation a number of times, it almost seems like you're the guy trying to plan the invasion of Normandy with like 25 people, right? And they can be the most valiant, well-meaning, pretty well-armed guys, but it almost seems insurmountable when you're talking about multiple billions of dollars like that.
Right. Well, the number of families that we serve, and when you think about it, NYCHA serves 650,000 New Yorkers. So it's roughly the 20th largest city in the country.
Sure.
It's a city within the city of New York. And if you think about that being the second largest city in the state of New York, it's well worth the investment. We support families who are desperately seeking, safe, affordable housing. The $13 billion, again, is a large number. I don't want to underplay it in any way. And to address, a capital backlog of that nature and the associated quality of life issues that NYCHA residents face, we certainly need support from not just local elected officials, but at the state level and as well as at the federal level, as well as others in the private sector and in the philanthropic sector that believe that this is a critical asset that's worth preserving.
And just to be clear, when you say unmet need or a backlog of unmet needs, you're talking about the elevators, the locks, the roofs.
Yeah. I'm talking about the heating and cooling systems, all the building envelopes, the bricks. Again, if you think about the sheer number of housing units that we're referring to here, this is the largest stock of permanently affordable housing in New York City and in the country. And if you were to look at a replacement cost of that number would be multiples of $13 billion. It'd be, $60 billion or something along those lines. So it's a great investment if you think about, ensuring the stability of those families and the preservation for long term.
I tend to read things with a political eye, and so reading between the lines of this report, I see that the federal government has sort of put some limits on how much it will subsidize, and the state and the city haven't come through with certain key amounts of money on an ongoing basis, and that's what creates this backlog. Are people just giving lip service to public housing without really providing the dollars?
Well, I think public housing is challenged by many of the forces that confront, supporting families in this country. And public housing happens to be one that's very visible because it is a physical asset, and so you can see the lack of investment in the deterioration. Let's keep in mind that this was a commitment that our tax dollars that go to the federal government is intended to support. The federal government has underfunded public housing dramatically. The federal government admits that. The city and the state have stepped up over the years to try and support some of the areas that the federal government has not completely followed through on, but suffice it to say that has not been sufficient, and it's going to take a partnership on all three branches or levels of government, local, state, and federal, in order for NYCHA to really have a plan.